edition of the Bullheaded Podcast. I'm your host, per usual, Sean Tyson, here with Zoo and P. Bush. How you guys doing?
Doing all right, man. Zoo and I talking pre-production, man. Bears taking the L, but Fields continuing to progress, man. I think he's going to end up QB1 in fantasy this year. Bright future in Chicago, but on a snowy day here in Chicago, first snow here. So we're hitting that winter time, man.
Yeah, man. Football this weekend, man. It was almost perfect, man. I went 4-1 this week. Shout outs to Quan and Dalvin Cook for being the monsters that they are at the RB1 position, man. But took one L down. I'm a little hurting just a little. Couldn't get that 5-0 week. But my teams are coming back, baby. Because the RBs, man, the RBs carry me right now. All of them. Shout out to Dalvin Cook and Saquon again, man. Because those boys, they're running like no other players right now. So shout out to them.
That is the Zoo philosophy, running backs in fantasy. Paying off.
Just carrying me.
I will say my running backs, I had a lot of injuries, but I drafted deep enough to where I'm in I guess you could say four-way tie for first. So I think this Sunday is going to be a proving ground of how it's going to be. I guess the playoffs are going to shake out in my league, so my big money league anyway. So going to be looking forward to that. Speaking of fantasy, shout out to people that you thought of this topic. We're going to be talking about fantasy backfields. There's been a lot of change up with, the assumed starters in a lot of these leagues and the guys that were probably drafted higher to their backups and other, switch gadget players getting more carries and things like that. So we're going to kind of talk about some of the backfields and the splits and who should be getting what in terms of carries, less carries, who's a touchdown monster, things of that nature. And P. Bush, I'm going to start with you.
This is tough, man. There's a lot this year. I think it actually might be one of the biggest split backfield years that I've seen since in about 12 years of playing fantasy football. So I'm actually going to start with the Dolphins because I have both of these guys on my team in my dynasty. I got Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. I think we've talked about this, but very quiet trade deadline move that could be paying off major dividends for a team in a very tight division. And also in a division that, has had some running back issues. We've seen the Bills for years have running back issues. The Jets, losing Breece Hall, unfortunately. Sorry, Sean. They have that Michael Carter, but James Robinson, you could also consider that kind of a split backfield at this point.
Yeah.
And then you got Ramondre, who really took over Damian Harris this year. So it's actually been a really interesting division to see how those running backs play out. But, man, I think a lot of people thought, at the beginning of the season, Chase Edmonds was going to have a huge role. Had a couple of major dropped passes for touchdown early in the season. And here comes Raheem Mostert, man. And he kind of took over being that speedster guy out of San Fran. And they decided to bring in one of his old buddies from San Fran, Jeff Wilson. And I'm looking at this team, man. And, the past couple of weeks, I've been riding Raheem Mostert. But this week, I decided to pull the trigger and start Jeff Wilson over him. They both ended up having great games. I think Mostert put up about 60 and a touchdown. But Jeff Wilson heavily out-carried him. And that kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought it'd be a bit more of a split. But in such a high volume offense, that is obviously getting up in heavy leads very quickly too. Almost like the Chiefs. I swear to God, they're looking a little bit like the Chiefs were with Tyreek Hill, low time of possession, but they're just putting up so many points so quickly that they get up at the end of the game and they can just kind of start running the ball. So I think both of these guys are solid flex plays. I think you could maybe consider, maybe just not off of this 1 week, but Jeff Wilson could be an RB2 on your team if you got him. But you can't automatically just bench one of the two because they are splitting time. So I'm personally a bit higher on Jeff Wilson at this point. I think he's a bit more impactful on a yard per carry basis. Mostert does have good receiving qualities there. I think they both do. But this is a tough one to call, but on such a high-powered offense, you can't go wrong with either one. So I'm personally riding with Jeff Wilson, but if needed on a bye week, I might even have to start both of them. If you're in that scary of a situation with your bye weeks and you maybe didn't draft perfectly in that situation, it's not a bad backfield to duo in your lineup.
Yeah, man. Definitely. The Dolphins committee, man. The good thing is their offense is good. So
that's
both
why.
getting opportunities.
They
get in the red zone a lot. So if they're bound to score just because they're playing on a good team. Because talent-wise, they're both pretty average running backs, but great team.
Yep.
For me, man, committees, man. I'm watching this Detroit Lions. It's an absolute atrocity right now at the RB committee right now, man. I'm looking at this stud, DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, man.
Oh, man.
Losing carries. The Jamal Williams, he's a nice running back, man. But I'm looking at the injury report, and I don't see nothing on there. So you can't blame the shoulder, can't blame the ankle, can't blame the questionable because there's nothing on there. On the saddest, man, there's nothing on there. So I'm like, let's go, baby. DeAndre Swift time. Nope, no. I was so wrong, man. Watching that guy, he lucky he got that touchdown, man, because he was at negative 0.4 points for a long time.
He was.
Negative 4 yards. I remember that. I was raging. I thought D Swifty was going to be that guy. But I'm looking at Jamal Williams with over 60% of the snap right now, man.
Yep.
You got Justin Jackson.
Yeah, who
Justin Jackson?
Former Charger running back.
21% of the snaps. Swifty has 16%. What the hell is going on? He is the third running back in the committee right now, based on snap percentage. And he's healthy, based on the injury report. I don't know if the head coach don't like the brother.
I think maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, maybe he's a little short, not the typical bruiser type of back. Because I saw that touchdown that he got. He looked dynamic and fast. Like he looked real fast. Like as a pass catching back, 16% on the field.
Yeah, they're tanking.
And they're also using a little 2% of Craig Reynolds, man. Like what the hell is going on? You don't need 4 running backs on this Lions offense right now. Like if you're gonna go committee, okay, go dynamic duo, Thunder and Lightning. But nah, they're going a 3-headed committee right now. And I'm like Justin Jackson. I'm sorry, that dude's not that good. There's a reason he's been bouncing around as a backup running back for a while. He ain't that good. He got a second-round pick, man. Use him, please, for the sake of my fantasy team and the Lions offense. Because this dude is dynamic as a pass-catching guy. Like if you want to do Jamal at the goal line, I can't even hate on that because Jamal Williams is a great bruiser. Like that 1 yard carry, okay. But make it at least a 50-50 committee, man. I even take a 55-45 right now because I'm that desperate. But DeAndre Swift, man, been a little bit disrespected with this Justin Jackson BS as a pass. Let's stop it. Just stop it, man.
I think he's being disrespected by Jamal Williams. Like, congratulations, but there's a reason why he got shipped out of Green Bay. Like he's not the talent of Aaron Jones. I mean, maybe you can argue now he's better than AJ Dillon, considered how he's performed. But DeAndre Swift, his first game had 26 points. Like that shows how dynamic he is as a talent. I don't understand it. I'm with you, because he's on my team as well. Like I don't get. There's no injury designation, and when he's gotten his opportunities, he's looked explosive and he looks healthy. So it has to be he's either in the doghouse. Or it's just like you say. Maybe I would say Dan Campbell. I guess he maybe prefers more of a stronger type runner. But come on, man! Like DeAndre Swift is the guy they picked. Like as a high, person that is supposed to be their not bell cow, but their feature back. Do it, use them. I don't know. I agree.
Maybe mean it's also possible they just. If they're really trying to save for the future and they really think next year could be, maybe they just don't want him to re-injure because he is injury prone. That's the only other consideration you could probably have here. But to Zoo's point, the last week and a half, there really hasn't been anything on the injury report that they have to release. Like if there is something wrong, they have to release it on any player. And if he's not having a clear-cut designation and he's only getting 6 carries, the Bears' rush defense is not that great.
Like 28th against the running backs in fantasy football.
Yeah. So and especially to your point, Zoo, too. Like he has such a dynamic aspect out of the backfield in the check down game. Why aren't they even attempting to use him there? I'm a bit lost. That's why I traded him to you, Zoo. Sorry, man.
His usage might actually be crazy when. Like, I'm pretty sure he'll still be there next year. Like, if they really do get a chance to get a bona fide quarterback, like a running quarterback or like somebody who's more dynamic, he might become an even higher play. But like you said, he is a little bit injury prone. So hopefully the Lions down this, I guess you could say, fantasy stretch gives him the ability to showcase his just God-given talent to be a playmaker. And hopefully they do that. But for me, who I'm looking at in terms of just backfields with the committees and stuff like that, I got this guy off of waivers probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's just like a shot in the dark, more so because, in past years in fantasy, he's been a really just a definite. You could probably almost argue he's kind of like Jamal Williams, maybe a slight tick of being more explosive, and that's Gus Edwards. The Ravens backfield for me, starting out, everybody I think and for good reason, because he was a guy that was coming off injury, and he, most people thought he was going to bounce back in a positive way, and that was J.K. Dobbins. Unfortunately, he got hurt again and he got put on IR. And from my bet and just, what I think is going to happen, he's kind of just going to still be brought along slowly. And I don't think he's going to be a back that they're going to count on down the stretch. So for me, you start looking in that backfield. You had Mike Davis. He's in and out a little bit. But the two main guys are Kenyan Drake and Gus Edwards. And, when Gus Edwards first came back, I think he had around 18 carries. And that was off his serious injury that he had. I think it was an ACL. And he got 18 carries. So to me, it showed that they were very confident in how strong he was, and they were going to use him as more of a bell cow. And I was very encouraged about how he was used around the goal line. But Kenyan Drake is also very interesting because he's one of those boomer bust type guys, but he also has the ability to catch the ball. So you always know he's going to be in there on third down. So it's kind of teetering on like, what do you prefer more? And also all this stuff is different because you could be in different types of scoring leagues, PPR, standard, whatever. But, Kenyan Drake's ability to catch the ball does make it enticing to maybe slightly edge with him. But the reason why I would go with Gus is because the amount of carries he's had, because even in the Bucs game, I think he got around 11 carries before he went out with like a mild hamstring injury. And they're saying on the reports that he's good to go this week, him and Mark Andrews. Hopefully, Mark Andrews might be a little bit more murkier because I think he had a shoulder and a knee. So I'm not sure. But I think Gus Edwards, for the most part, is coming in and should be ready for this week. But for me, I would, trend a little bit towards Gus just because of the goal line carries and the amount of times they're going to carry. And anytime Lamar Jackson is your quarterback, I feel like it opens it up even more for a lot of the playmakers around him. I know Bateman's out, so at receiver, they're trying to ingratiate Deshaun Jackson, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Isaiah likely has had a couple of catches, but they're going to really need Mark Andrews to come back and be who Mark Andrews is, because if he comes back and you have Lamar, then it's going to open up that running game even more. So I think I would lean a little bit more towards Gus just because of the goal line carries and getting touchdowns, which equals more points. But that's a very interesting backfield because Kenyan Drake, he can spring off a 22, 24-point game out of nowhere, and you just be like, oh, that won me my week. So that's one backfield I like a lot.
That's probably the backfield arguably that you need both on your team because Gus Edwards, his health is clearly an issue. But Kenyan Drake, he can easily come in, and of course, the 1 week he drops 22, he was on my bench, because right? That's just how it goes, right? He's one of those guys where you don't know, should I start him, should I not? Exactly. It's just kind of that wishy-washy. And I do want to ask you guys about one more because I know it's not clear cut, and I know you can't sit one of these guys. But what about Elijah Mitchell out carrying?
Ooh, that was
Christian
interesting.
McCaffrey,
Yeah,
and he doubled his yards per carry in that game. Doubled it, 2 points or nearly like 2.6 to 4.9 a carry for Elijah Mitchell being the 4.9. I mean, do you consider playing Mitchell? Obviously, you can't sit McCaffrey. I'm not saying to do that.
Yeah.
But if you need a flex, do you consider
flex? Yeah, I would flex him.
Eli?
I would flex him. Just because the history of how not hardballs, but Shanahan's are with running backs. Like I think in his ideal world, he wants to like spread the wealth with running backs. I don't think he just wants to have one running back and give him 30 carries. That's just not, I don't think, how he operates. So yeah, I would flex him if you're desperate. I wouldn't just do it if you got a more viable flex because it could get murky. But
yeah. One thing I noted though was Elijah Mitchell got goal line carries.
Yep.
He's a bigger back.
I was like, CMC's on the sideline, and you got Elijah Mitchell's coming off injury at the goal line. That was shocking.
Gus Edwards did the same thing.
Because if they splitting goal line carries, man, Elijah Mitchell got real. Like he can get you 10, 12 points then, just based on his usage in an efficient running offense. Like obviously, like Jimmy G ain't that good, so they're gonna be relying on rushing the ball. And you got this backfield, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
So they upgraded from Jeff Wilson to CMC, and they got Elijah Mitchell back in the offense, who was really good last year. So they got two dynamic running backs back, and they're going to be used a lot because Jimmy Garoppolo is the definition of average. So they're going to rely on the rushing attack, goal line carries, efficient offense. So they're going to get down to the red zone a lot. So I feel like Elijah Mitchell, I think he's a flex. He's a flex opportunity. If you're in like a 12 team or a deeper league, I definitely feel comfortable with Elijah Mitchell, man. But 10 team, that's a little bit sus. But if you're in a deeper league, Elijah Mitchell with the flex, is not bad at all, especially with that offense.
I think we got to see the second game with both of them in the game as well. Like this was his first game back. Maybe they were just trying to get him back in the groove too, kind of see where he was at. But the fact that they were giving him goal line carries right off of injury, that I agree with you, Zoo. That was something I was taking note of. But then again, McCaffrey's never been a great goal line back. I mean, he can score, jumps over the top, able to get on.
He's
the
been
outside.
scoring a lot this year, man. He already got 7 touchdowns.
Of course, but Eli is a bigger back. I mean,
Bigger guy.
So yeah, that was the only other one I was thinking about.
Yeah, that was interesting to see the amount of carries he got. Like I said, that's why it was so similar to Gus, because I guess certain teams have like an affinity for players. Like, when I was looking at weeks back about adding like another back, and I looked at Gus, I was just reading a bunch of stuff, and a lot of people in like the Baltimore circles was just like they're a real big fan of Gus, and the coaching staff is as well. Like, fans like their players, but the coaching staff is like really, really high on a player. So, when you're reading reports like that and you're seeing things like that, it's like, well, maybe he's not just going to be a guy that they're going to, bring in slowly. Like, he's going to be a guy that's going to come right up off the mat and get 18 carries like Gus did. So, for me, you kind of find that balance. Like you say, this week I got to start him because I have a couple of backs out. But, depending on how he plays this week, Gus Edwards, maybe he becomes a flex. Who knows? Because that flex for me is always just in a constant rotation. I haven't had a constant flex all year. Like, it's just been a constant rotation of players. Yeah, flexes. It's tough because and that usually is the spot too where I always get wrong. Like, I've probably gotten a flex right twice. Now, it hasn't cost me as much, but it's like every flex that I usually pick is always another flex that like just ends up outperforming. Like, actually, the 2 weeks that I got my flex right was with Mooney, and that's just because these last couple of weeks he's gotten a little bit better, but. Yeah, it's just my flex, and that was part of the reason because I had AJ Dillon in the flex a lot. So that might be actually my fault. That's just bad coaching. I was just being stubborn and just keeping that guy in there when I should have, taken some.
Sounded like an old Bears GM making that call.
Just thinking the running game's going to get it going. So, speaking of AJ Dillon and the Packers, transitioning to the second topic. The Packers showed some life in their last game.
A little bit.
Aaron Rodgers looked like his old self. I will say Christian Watson is going to be a popular waiver wire pickup.
Number one.
Had a huge 3 touchdown game, and it was kind of crazy because he started off with 2 drops, so it kind of didn't look like he was going to have the game he was going to have. But he showed up and showed out, and it gave the Packers some life. I think are they second in the division right now? I think they are.
Yeah, they are. They're 4-6.
So, gave him a little life. The Commanders 5-5 with Taylor Heineke. I actually think this might be the death wish for Carson Wentz. I don't know. I mean, he may be a career backup for the rest of his time in the NFL, but Taylor Heineke, man, he just has something. I probably say he's like a gamer, and he just knows how to go out there and, quote unquote, command Washington and get them to win. So
that was a good one.
Yeah, that was corny. But anyways, so I wanted to ask the guys, who do you think out of those 2 teams has the best ability to make the playoffs? And Zoo, I'm gonna start with you.
For me, man, I'm looking at both these rosters. Commanders the biggest upset of the weekend, obviously.
Yeah.
Like the Eagles obviously undefeated, man. Division rival game. Shout out to them to getting it done. But I'm gonna focus on my Packers. What I saw was the rushing attack, baby. You got to rely on the rushing game. Like, shout outs to Aaron Jones because this dude is an elite running back. He just hasn't gotten elite touches. Like, he has some games where he gets single digit carries. That can't happen. Yeah. That just cannot happen when you have Aaron Rodgers not playing at MVP performances in the number of weapons he has in the passing game. You got to rely on the rushing attack. Aaron Jones always had his career over like 5 yards of carry. This dude is an animal, and he's a big play threat too. And he's got pass catching ability too. So he's like the complete back. He got 24 carries, obviously a 138 on 5.5 yards per carry, man. Shout out to Aaron Jones because that brother wins people leagues, man, because that dude's a beast. But man, Aaron Rodgers, man. He's been awful this year. He's been atrocious this year. But something about those Dallas Cowboys, man, got that blood flowing. Something about those Dallas Cowboys, man, because some of those deep balls, I'm like, oh, he can still throw the deep ball. To Christian Watson, this guy, like I remember Christian Watson known for dropping that pass. 4 for 107, man. Like he only had 4 catches, man, but they were all like deep balls, man.
Yep,
deep ball. And obviously he got a hat trick, 3 tutties, man. And with Romeo Doubs out, Aaron Rodgers is looking for another guy. Like Alan Lazard, nice and safe. That's a number 2. Alan Lazard's a number 2. Like a big.
He had a nice
bigger
clutch catch though on that in overtime.
Yeah, he's pretty good at catching the football, but he a number 2. He no number 1. Aaron Rodgers looking for number 1, and he gave Romeo Doubs an opportunity. Obviously, with the high ankle sprain, he's out for a couple of weeks. So now it's definitely not Sammy Watkins, man. That dude is washed, and he's always injured. Surprised he even played that game. But Christian Watson right now, obviously, you guys pointed out there's going to be a high waiver pickup. Because if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play like a bum, he has played like a bum this year. Like if he plays above his bum level, one of his receivers is going to do good, be a top 20 receiver. Thought it was Romeo Doubs. Alan Lazard had he's been pretty consistent this year, man. But maybe it's Christian Watson. Who knows, man? So they got a little life there, just a little life.
You think they have a chance?
Oh, are they on life support right now? And they just had their first breath against the Dallas Cowboys because that's what happened. Something about the Packers and Cowboys revitalized them. 31-28. Reminds me of a playoff game they played against each other. OT for the win. Very, very similar ending. So they got a little life. Shout out to the Commanders for winning, man, but I ain't buying that team. I think that team's atrocious. It's atrocious, I think. Yeah, I just don't like the football team. And the division was a lot better than I thought. You know my feelings about the Eagles coming into the year. I was super high on the Eagles. Yeah. They had not disappointed me. I think they're by far even with that bad loss. Get those guys a break, man. They went undefeated, man. They probably didn't take the Commanders seriously at all. And obviously the Dallas Cowboys defense is elite, and the Giants surprisingly are decent this year, even though I still don't think they're that good, but they're winning clutch games. So the Commanders, man, obviously last in the division, even though their record is quite respectable. But I can't believe I'm going to say the NFC least, man, is a little competitive this year. And
it might be the best division.
It might be the best division.
Yeah, which
at least on paper.
Which is shocking and based on number of wins. But I look at the Packers division, Detroit Lions, even though they lost to them, that's an embarrassing bad team. Your Chicago Bears, man. Justin Fields a stud. But that team's defense is atrocious. It is so bad. Yeah, it is. They can't stop nobody. They're so bad at defense. So, you got obviously the Vikings, who look unbelievable game. One of the best football games I've seen all year. Probably the best game all season against the Buffalo Bills. Shout out to the Vikings for getting it done, even though they made some mistakes. But Justin Jefferson's got a football, so he was able to get it done. So. The Vikings, obviously, the premier team of the division. Shouts to them. Shouts to Kana. But Green Bay Packers, man, going for that wild card, man. They're going for it. I feel like compared to these two teams, man, got to go with Aaron Rodgers still, even though he's playing like a bum this year.
That's fair. I don't know. I think, personally, my gut tells me the Commanders. But my head is the Packers, and I'm going to go with my head. And that's only because of Aaron Rodgers. I kind of feel like, Rodgers has, the ability. We know he has the talent. But you kind of got to understand that, and this is no excuse, but you kind of got to understand that he's had to kind of ingratiate himself with the receivers. Now, do I think Christian Watson is going to be able to do anywhere even half of what he did with that? No. I kind of, what he kind of reminds me of? And I don't even, he's super fast. And that's the reason why they took him top of the second round. But he kind of reminds me of Valdez Scantling, just in terms of his body frame, speed. So it's is he that type of player? Because there's a reason why, when they were both kind of healthy, there's a reason why Romeo Doubs was starting. It was because he's a better route runner. He knows how to get open. Now, Doubs had his fair share of drops sometimes, but he was a more complete receiver. So I don't know if it was just the Cowboys didn't plan for him and he just took advantage, which to his point, he had 4 catches, for 100-something yards and 3 touchdowns. So he was able to do that, but I'm not too sure about him being the go-to receiver. He might be able to do it, but if we're being optimistic and we say, okay, now he's the Aaron's go-to receiver, I kind of like Green Bay because if they still continue to give Aaron Jones the ball and continue to feed him like he's a number one playmaker, then that's going to help Aaron in the passing game. Because when you can establish the run and you're able to run on opponents, it makes every part of your offense better. And like you say, I don't know if it was the infatuation with AJ Dillon at the beginning of the year and trying to split carries with him and trying to figure out that dynamic and that balance, because neither of them have been really hurt. So it's not like one's been out and the other one's been out and they couldn't establish rhythm. Like they've both been healthy. So maybe it's just the coaching staff, maybe calling out Matt LaFleur a little bit. Maybe he wasn't game planning the best. Now, to Zoo's point, Aaron hasn't been playing well this year, but you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks who don't have, like you say, legit. Because if people, I don't care what these pundits on TV try to say and talk about the talent that Green Bay Packers. No, the Green Bay Packers receiving core is probably bottom 5, if we're being honest, in the league. It's not, even though they drafted guys, they're right now, it has a chance to grow and be better. But they're, like you say, Romeo Dobbs they were trying to groom him to be number 1, and he was playing at Nevada last year. That should tell you all you need to know. There's not a lot of rookies. Everybody can't be Justin Jefferson. Just come in as a rookie and just destroy. That's hard to do. And also when you're playing with somebody like Aaron Rodgers, he's probably demanding more from you in certain checks. So it's just a little bit harder to play with a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like you say, like Zeus said, but the Commanders, they're saying Chase Young might be activated this week to maybe boost that defense a little bit. Maybe that's a secret weapon that might even make them more of a threat. But like you say, Taylor Heineke, man, he's a gamer. He knows how to just go in and fight to the tooth and nail. And I would be nervous if it's, he's up 3 or you're down 3 and Taylor Heineke's going to the fourth quarter. He might end up winning that game because he does come out and just ball out when the games are on the line. But for me, I'm just going with pedigree, man. I'm going with Aaron Rodgers out of these two. I think he's a guy who likes to play the Dallas Cowboys. That might have been a nice pick-me-up.
No.
He's playing the Tennessee Titans. I feel like Tennessee Titans might be down for a letdown because they had this huge, the huge win against Denver, that close game. So, I think I'm going to side with them. But schedule-wise, I don't know if you guys looked at Green Bay's schedule, but the schedule's tough. It's tough. So that's why it's gosh, it's you got Tennessee, just the next 4 games, you got Tennessee, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Now, division games.
The Rams, we cannot say the Rams are
pretty
tough
bad.
no more. Yeah.
They're pretty tough. But
their next game after that is the Dolphins.
Yeah,
Ooh,
Minnesota.
That's a tough one. Minnesota's tough.
Yeah. So it's if you look at their schedule, that's the only reason why it's a little hesitation. But I just can't ride with Heineke. If you, like you say, I don't know how I would sleep. And plus, too, I think the Packers was part of my Super Bowl pick, so I got to kind of ride with that.
Yeah.
I picked them, the Chargers and the Packers. So they're both, and I think both teams are in the hunt. They're not even in the playoffs, so go figure.
No. And if the Commanders were to win, that would put all 4 teams potentially in the NFC East in the playoffs. And sorry, fellas, my Wi-Fi is a bit crap. We have bad weather in Chicago, but
yeah,
I'm going to go with the Commanders, and I'm really going. One, they already have a 1-game lead on the Packers, so I mean that's huge.
Nah, I forgot about that. They won that
season.
game.
They're 5-5. Packers are 4-6. Their next 2 games are the Texans and the Falcons. Those are 2 very winnable games. They still play the Giants twice. I think that they could upset the Giants, at least split 1-1. That's all they really need to do. Then they play the Niners. That's a tough game, but that could be a pivotal game for the Commanders because that's the team that is holding the 7th spot right now. And Jimmy G, you never really know how to approach a Jimmy G game. Let's be honest, no matter what weapons he has on the field. So, and then they end out the game or the season with the Browns and the Cowboys. So, those last 3 games I think will decide their season. But you're looking at that record to record compared to the Packers. I think the Commanders finished maybe a full game ahead of the Packers in the end, 9-8, 8-9 comparatively. But I still don't think either team makes it. I just have more faith in the Cowboys and Niners holding. But I don't know, man. The Commanders have some. You want to talk about a good backfield? Gibson and Brian Robinson. There's another
monster
split. Yeah, another 2-headed monster. Zoo, I know you're not high on him this year, but Curtis Samuel, man, they got Dotson back, Terry McLaurin. And the only reason they beat the Eagles last night was they relied heavily on their run game. They didn't ask Taylor to do too much. He did throw a pick, but they relied on their running game similarly to the Packers. Maybe that's the recipe for success for both of these teams is they just have to use their running game to open up their passing game enough. And, Packers defense hasn't lived up to their perfect expectations like we had entering into this year. And with Chase Young coming back, man, this Commanders defense could be interesting. So it's kind of those 2 wishy-washy teams in the league right now. They're both kind of pushing. They're somewhat on life support, man. But I don't know. I just think looking at their remaining schedules, I just think the Commanders have a better opportunity to take advantage of it. but they're in a harder division. So
I
neither
will
team's gonna have a
say-
chance.
I will say if the Packers do get in somehow, some way, it would not shock me if they made the Super Bowl. Because
Really?
I feel like this.
Wow.
You know why?
It would not. It would not shock me. Did you hear that right?
You know why? Because I feel like, every year Aaron has made the playoffs, he's always been the decided favorite.
Okay.
And he's always crumbled. Maybe if he somehow galvanizes his team and they somehow squeak in the playoffs, he'll be but first off, he'll be on the road, so he might be in better weather. He might not be in a freaking snowstorm in Green Bay.
True.
So possibly be on the road, so he might be in a dome situation. And I don't think there'll be any pressure because it's like everybody knows his receiving core is not the best. Like you say, the guys he would maybe be going against, I'm not a believer in the Bucs. I don't care what they've been doing. I'm not a believer in that team. It's just kind of felt like they're disjointed. That's for what helps them is their division. Like you say, you would be going against. I love Jalen Hurts, but that he would be all the pressure's on Jalen Hurts. He's a newer quarterback. He hadn't really been in the playoffs, but one time. Kirk Cousins, are you going to trust him in the playoffs? You got to think about the guys he starts going against. He's the guy that's been there before and has failed a bunch, but he would also have the least amount of expectation because everybody be like, nobody would be picking the Packers. So maybe they just go out there and play free, and he winds up. Now, I do believe if that did happen, whoever he played the Super Bowl would destroy him. But I'm just saying it might be if he does get them to the playoffs. Yeah, if he squeaks in in a weird 8-9, 9-8 scenario, as long as he doesn't play the Niners, I think he can get there. Yeah, as long as he doesn't play the Niners, I think he can get there. So that'd be.
I hope you're right, Sean, man. I hope you're right. Because I've been very bearish this year on the Green Bay Packers, man. With that fiasco in the offseason, I'm like, all these bad vibes. I was losing his best weapon. I was very bearish the start of the season. And they
got to have a reunion, man. It's like you said, that is the worst breakup in NFL history. Neither of them is doing anything.
You got Devontae's quarterback crying at press conferences, man.
For real.
You got Aaron Rodgers, man. Just
because he knows the Rams going to walk.
We're not dead yet. I'm like,
I think that those were tears of I might not have my job next year. That's what those tears were. I think he's seeing because, like you say, you have Devontae, who's most people thought is the best receiver in the league, and he's looking. He's
been good. He's been good this year.
He's been good, but it's not like he's been with Aaron. And I think, like you say, if he just, I don't even know if he would. I mean, you put Devontae in most of the teams in this league outside of the bottom teams, like maybe Detroit, Cleveland without Deshaun. But if you put Devontae in a lot of situations, he's probably doubling what he's doing right now. Like Derek Carr has been a hindrance for him. And like you say, I think it probably hits him a little bit harder because they were teammates in college. And, he probably was selling them on the idea of man, I could play just as good as Aaron Rodgers. He was probably saying that on the phone. And then now they're looking at the realization of they're not going to make the playoffs. And now it's just you're fighting to, I guess, stat pad. So, which is fine, I guess, because you're getting a nice check. But it will be interesting in the offseason what the Raiders do. We can talk about that in the offseason. But
you know what they're going to do? Fire their head coach, man, because he's
he
lost to Jeff Saturday at ESPN.
Yeah.
Man. That's what he lost.
Yeah. Jeff Saturday was playing fantasy football. He was freaking playing fantasy football like the rest of us, and now all of a sudden he's coaching in the NFL and beat Josh McDaniels.
Yep,
I've been on that. I'm in the number one seat. I'm the driver of the Josh McDaniels should be fired. I felt like he should have never been hired. And
he's going to go back to New England, just like every other time.
Man. And resurrect Mac Jones or
Daddy Belichick.
Bailey Zappi. He's going to resurrect one of those quarterbacks, which, like you say, I have no beef with Josh McDaniels as a coordinator. He's, like you say, Tom Brady, we all know is an all-world talent, but Josh McDaniels is a good coordinator. But as a head coach, nada. So
Raiders should have got rid of their interim coach from last year, man. He did a great job
he did
make the playoffs with all the
so
circumstances, man. With all the craziness going on, making the playoffs. So you got this year, none of the distractions. And they might be the worst team in NFL right now.
Teams are so scared to hire interims. They're just scared to do it, even when they win, because they just think it's just. And part of that probably is because of their owners. The owners are wanting who they want in there, and they just can't sell tickets to an interim coach. So we'll see. We'll see how all that shakes out. But like I said, the NFL season is flying. Fantasy football playoffs are right around the corner. The end of the season is right around the corner. You guys got to be locked in and tuned in, man. The Bullheaded. Make sure you always tune in our Instagram, Bullheaded_pod, or TikTok, Bullheaded_864. YouTube page, Quantro knows. Like I said, I'm creating content every day, putting up all the types of sports, football, basketball, mainly for right now because that's the season we're in. Also doing the audio podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you comment if you think we should be some topics we could talk about. Maybe we'll answer it and do that on a future pod. And for me, Zoo, and P. Bush, we are out.